Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. And I'm back today with our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore. How's it going today, Bill?
Hey, I'm here. I'm alive. I'm happy.
Good, good. It all sounds like you're being optimistic. Probably
Ye-
something's really wrong and you don't want to talk about it, but that's
No, I
okay.
don't want to talk
That's
about
okay.
it. We talked about it off camera. Just, one of
Yeah.
those things about getting old, damn it.
Yes. Well, yeah, here on the show, we keep thinking about renaming old people talk about cars.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, I've got quite a few things. Some of them are related to Hurricane Milton. Some of
Yeah.
them are related to, I got some stuff on Lucid, Rivian, Tesla. I've got some stuff on the IRA. Oh, let's see. Oh, yeah. What else we got? Something about EV tax credits. And my one I want to talk about the most is the best and worst cities to drive in, because I kind of have a passion for this topic,
Yes. Oh,
and
yes, I got
yes.
to share that with
Oh,
you.
I think people are gonna like this, and they may like my perspectives on this. So we've got lots of people chiming in. Let's first off let's talk about this article about what to know if you drive an EV and live in Hurricane Milton's path. Now, did you look through this article?
Yes, I have. Yeah. Um,
Okay.
and actually, there's several of them but obviously, I'm concerned about what happened after Helene, I guess it is. Now Milton's building up a storm, and I've been keeping fairly close track of it. I used to have relatives that lived down there. They have since, moved to other parts of the country. Um, but one of the things that came out of Helene was the fact that you had these warnings being posted about if you have an electric car and it gets flooded, don't try to plug it in or start it or run it. And I finally found in one of those articles that there was a report. Now I'm trying to think that out of the 50 or so fires that were
Hmm.
reported in the wake of Helene, about 11 of those, or about 25% of those um, fires were caused by EVs. Now, it didn't say which ones, so it could have been a number of them. But yeah, I thought it would be helpful if we kind of talk about that. There's some articles that we've posted that give suggestions on what to do to make sure that you aren't one of the casualties, that happen if you happen to be in the uh, Tampa area. As we were talking off camera about, I've been down there on a number of occasions. I like it. It's a wonderful area down there. You've been down there on a number of occasions, and we certainly don't. In fact, we had one of my early partners in the Quick Bike project that we had live down there. So it's something that we're concerned about. EVs and hurricanes don't go well together. But then the fire threat is not limited to the just EVs. 75% of the fires that they had down there, they've recorded in the wake of Helene, were caused by internal combustion engine vehicles. So it's not it's not just restricted to EVs, but obviously you don't want to take a $70,000 car and have it totaled because it got flooded by salt water. And you
Well, a
certainly
lot
don't
of the
burn your house down.
well, a lot of the information I found on this was sort of generic. It's like, don't let your car get flooded. I mean,
Well,
like
yeah,
if you're,
exactly.
it's like, but you don't want to do that with a gas car either. So I don't know where
Yeah,
that was,
yeah, it's fun.
revolutionary advice. But
Well, yeah,
one of
I
the,
mean, yeah, I was going to say that there was a video that got a lot of spread of somebody's security camera caught their Tesla in their garage bursting into flames, and so they left the impression that there were hundreds of EVs, and it was encouraging to see. Well, yes, there were fires, but it was only about 25% of the automobile fires that were electric cars that were caused by the flooding. So yeah, get it to high ground. If you live in an area that's above the tidal surge um, area, then make sure you get it in a garage somewhere under shelter. So yeah, most of those advice is generic, nothing in particular. One of the things, the articles that I came across was the one about the guy in Asheville who found his Rivian 100 yards away from where he had parked it in the storm. It was
Wow.
this the one where the Rivian is literally coated, looks like about 2 inches of mud on the side of the vehicle. And of course, his concern is that, if I lost it, turns out that the mud actually helped him, because the mud being caked on the side of his Rivian, I think it was a sedan, I believe, this on the side of that Rivian actually sealed it from the water getting into the cabin of the vehicle.
Oh, wow.
So he was able to, recover his vehicle, and apparently got in it. Don't know if that would have been maybe the thing I would have done, but I guess you don't have a choice. You it's your vehicle, start it up, see what happens. He started up and it runs fine. So,
Nice. There was something here in the Tampa Bay area. Pinellas and Hillsborough counties are both opening up garages to the public to be able to go and park your vehicle in a parking structure to get it up and out of the water.
Yep.
So that's in Pinellas and Hillsborough counties. And the kind of generic advice was, like you said, if it does become submerged, don't try to drive it.
Yeah.
Now, just contact your insurance company and let them tell you what to go do at that point. One of the other things was people, when this last Hurricane Helene, powering up the refrigerators and other things and using the power to not lose all of their produce. But a lot of those people were probably a little further in.
Yeah.
And, depending on where their situation is. I was talking to somebody yesterday that I know owns a couple of Teslas that's down there prepping for the storm. And I was like, well, if you had solar, which he doesn't have solar, and he doesn't have a bidirectional charger. Okay. But he can plug some stuff in.
Yeah.
But anyways, doesn't have that. My thought was, we were talking about, he was like, well, then I couldn't drive away if I needed to. It's like, well, the gas car people aren't going to be able to drive away either.
Yeah,
exactly. Gas stations won't work.
Well, yeah, and there was a report I was listening to this morning where there are people going around trying to get ready for the storm and looking for gas, and there's no, despite the governor saying, "Oh, there's plenty of gas, we have gas available," some people are having trouble finding it. And if your power goes out, then the grid goes down, then you're not going to go anywhere either. So with a gas car, because gas stations depend on pumps and pumps depend on electricity. And if there's no electricity, you're not going to go anywhere. So I think they advise you, if you have an EV, obviously one thing is try to get it charged to at least 80% capacity. Again, park it, on as high a ground as you possibly can, under shelter if you possibly can. If you live in Pinellas or Hillsborough counties, maybe take advantage of the offer that the businesses and the county is offering to get it off the ground. There's also an article I posted. If you happen to have an electric bike, some advice on get it to high ground if you've got a second-story building, or if you can't do that, if it's too heavy or you don't have that, take the battery off and move the battery someplace where the battery will at least not be submerged underwater. So
I was advised putting the battery up on a high cabinet or on top of a high cabinet, something like that.
There's a guy that
seemed like good advice.
There's a guy that does real estate podcast that I've also kind of followed recently, talking about where the water, from the Helene, where Helene hit, and there were people that in neighborhoods there on the coastal area further north of Tampa, where the water was 5 feet deep. You can still see the ring where the water had the tidal surge had put the water up. And and the sad thing is that he was going by a couple of houses that had signs newly remodeled, and there was and there were watermarks 5 feet up the side of the house, and the people apparently for sale signs. what are you going to do? You've got trying to get out of a deal where you've got who knows how much of your money sunk into, and now you got national people advertise, oh, this house has been underwater,
Right.
and
Oh, I
especially
know.
the one that had just remodeled. It's
Ah,
sad.
that's sad. It's real sad to see that happen. I want to move on and talk about the
Okay.
State Farm article. This one's kind of funny. Now, this is really the article is from a local TV station, but it's about Bloomington and Normal, Illinois. Okay, so it
Right.
really is specific to the State Farm headquarters
Yep.
in Bloomington, Illinois. But it made it kind of sound like it was like State Farm's not going to insure cars or something or car parks. Anyways, so what's going on is State Farm is removing electric vehicle charging stations from its parking decks. Now, I'd never heard the term parking decks before,
Deck.
but
Yeah.
this is a car park, a parking garage, whatever, at corporate and corporate South headquarters in Bloomington and at its hubs throughout the nation. So if it has a multi-layer car parking at a State Farm location, they're removing electric vehicle charging from that. And the reason is the local Illinois fire department told them there is a work protection evaluation, enterprise risk assessment conducted that says that fire risks were identified in the parking garage that cannot be mitigated at this time. So they said they're going to have to move EV parking to outside surface area
Outdoors. Yeah. Surface
parking.
areas. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
this is really kind of interesting because this is coming from the fire department telling them to do this. So it wasn't like in State Farm decided there was an inherent insurance risk.
Right. Yeah.
They're basically being told to do this. The article really didn't get into the kind of pressure that was being applied by the city to do this, but I thought that was kind of fascinating because we know at one point a few years ago there was parking garages said no Chevy bolts.
Yeah.
Okay, because there was a problem with fires with the Chevy bolts. That was a few years ago, and Chevy since replaced all the batteries in those Chevy bolts, and the newer ones don't have the problems. What was that? That was probably 8 years ago. It's
at
been a
least.
long time,
Yeah.
2015, 2016, something like that. I mean, it's been a while since EV fires have really been a problem. This whole thing, though, with the EVs, some of them getting salt water in them and stuff like that, there's been some challenges when we were talking earlier about, the hurricanes, because we're expecting Hurricane Milton to hit Tampa probably tomorrow
Yep.
night sometime.
Yep.
And that it's probably not going to be pretty, especially since they just went through it. But anyways, I thought that was kind of interesting about what State Farm was going through. I want to talk about
Okay. While we're
this.
on
Okay.
insurance, though, can we point out the confusion over at Geico? Our friend
Oh,
Warren
okay.
Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway owns Geico, and the impression that people that have bought the Cybertruck, and by the way, I saw my second one this week here in Omaha, that the impression is that they're not going to insure the vehicles, but then Geico comes out and says, "Oh no, we'll insure them." I am seeing so many different reports offering contradictory statements that I wish Geico would come out formally with a statement saying, "Yes, we do. We do insure them." But right now, it's an uncertain exactly whether they are insuring those vehicles or not.
Many years ago, I had a Ford Expedition, and a nice doctor in Memphis decided it was time to total out my Expedition. And he got off a late shift and he blew a red light and just smashed his Acura right into the side of my Ford in an intersection and totaled out my Expedition. So I got rid of that and I picked up a Chevy Yukon or GMC Yukon. And my car insurance doubled. And I would just like, I was calling the agent. It's like, how can this be so damn expensive? And he's like, well, people who drive Yukons do a lot of damage to other cars. And it was really funny because it was the same
Mm.
exact size as my Expedition. But apparently people who drove Yukons tended to cause a lot of damage to other vehicles. I
Huh.
suspect that as I've looked at the few accidents that Cybertrucks have been in, the Cybertrucks generally aren't damaged too much. The other vehicles are taking a beating.
Yeah.
Okay, there's not
Well,
many accidents with them yet, but there have been some.
and this was one of the comments, one of the articles that supposedly the reason why Geico is not insuring them is because the vehicles are overweight, basically, that they are outside of whatever the insurance parameters are that they set up for underwriting different types of vehicles. And in this particular case, the Cybertruck is considered outside of the weight parameters that they normally have, I guess, for this type of vehicle. So it could be that it's just, it's a big rolling tank. And now, having seen him in person now, I am still not enamored. I have no clue why anyone in their right mind
I said that for years about the iPhone.
would buy one of those things. I just, well, yeah, I guess, but now when I first saw the Honda Insight, uh, it was at a trade. It was at a EV trade show, and it was in what's called the body in white. So it would basically just the aluminum frame all welded together, right? The
Mm-hmm.
car without all the stuff attached. I thought, God, that's ugly. And what do? I go and buy one a few months later. So,
Yeah.
it might grow on me over time, but at the moment, it just doesn't do
I
anything
get it.
for me. So
I get it. So I want to talk a little bit about the Inflation Reduction Act. So I found this article, and I got this through MSN, but I think it originally came from Wall Street Journal. Anyways, Big Oil urges Trump not to gut Biden's climate law.
yeah,
I thought this was kind of fascinating. So
yeah,
oil companies are conveying an unlikely message to the GOP to spare the Inflation Reduction Act. And you and I have talked about this a lot. I mean, the IRA is in our face all the time in the EV space. I mean, it's what controls now the EV mandates aren't part of the IRA. The EV
no,
mandates are all executive actions. Okay.
right,
But it includes all of the different incentives for purchasing EVs. It includes money for putting in the NEVI charging stations that will start getting put in sometime in the next couple of years. That money's hard to spend. I think the red tape behind it's a little much. But, and as we said before, it doesn't do anything to reduce inflation. It was a really weirdly named law, but a lot of laws, they usually try to throw the name common sense into something too. And, there's a few other
right.
things they always try to tag with these laws. And it's just like, really? Common
Marketing is
sense?
just
Yeah,
marketing. Yeah,
I get it. But anyways, it's done a lot. We talked about the impact of about 130, 140,000 manufacturing jobs that have been created, and the amount of investment it's seeded. It's put a few billion into some investments, and 10 times that amount of money has been put in from big corporations, many of them foreign, into developing manufacturing in the United States. Manufacturing is coming back to the U.S.
yeah,
In some regard, and this is a good thing. Anyways, in discussions with former President Trump, with his campaign and allies in Congress, ExxonMobil, Phillips 66, and
mhm.
Occidental Petroleum. Who owns Occidental? I think that's an Omaha company, isn't it? That's a Warren Buffett.
I think Warren
That
has an
No, it's
interest in
Warren
it.
Buffett. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Have extolled the benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act. Many in the fossil fuel industry opposed the law when it passed in 2022, but have come to love provisions that earmark billions of dollars for low carbon energy projects that they're betting on. Now, one of the things, I've been doing some pet projects in the biofuel space,
uh-huh.
and there's all these things called RINs credits. They're insane. It's probably a bit of a boondoggle in my mind, because I've looked at just the credits are greater than what a gallon of fuel sells for. But the idea is that these credits are designed to help pay back for all the research and development that's gone in to making these things work. And there's a lot of investment to start pumping out a dollar's worth of product. One of the projects I've been involved in has spent $55 million before they were able to even sell their first gallon of fuel. And, so that's, I'm just saying it takes a long time to start seeing that turn into some kind of cash machine with the credits. So it wasn't small dollars. Let's see. Some executives in the largely pro-Trump oil industry are worried the former president, if reelected, would side with conservative lawmakers who want to gut the IRA. They fear losing tax credits vital for their investments in renewable fuel, carbon capture, and hydrogen, costly technologies requiring U.S. support to survive the early years. One of my big criticisms of the IRA is because it's so much of a bloated bill, nobody really knows what it does. And you see all these things where something gets passed, and you'll see where all of these CPAs and other lawyers have tried to go through these things to try to break them down for people. And it's really, there's so many pages to these laws that that the Congress people who passed it didn't know what was in it. And they were just told to vote for it.
Hopefully their staff
maybe I'm really, I don't feel good about many people in politics. I really feel that we get so much stuff that's passed by our government that nobody knows what's going on. They they're told to vote for it, and so they do because they feel obligated to.
So who read the 950 pages of the Project 2025 paper, right? You know what I did this weekend while I was working on updating EV World? I was also listening to the audio version of Jack Smith's 160 page reindictment of the current guy trying to get back into office. So that took me over 4 hours. 4 hours and 37 minutes to listen to the audio of that whole. So I was telling my wife, I said, I feel qualified now to take the bar exam.
There you go.
But that's the kind of, stuff that, you get these documents that are hundreds of pages long. And I got to say that, I admire the people that actually sat down and produced that thing. I can't imagine having to, go through all of this. And thank you, the guys at the Justice Department who put that thing together. I admire your work. That's a lot
of our government money spent writing those documents.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why it's tough for somebody to win in a fight with the government.
I don't object to what they were doing. I really don't. But anyway, that's the politics side of thing. And let's move on before we drive any listeners away.
No, I get it. So Exxon and Chevron, the two largest U.S. oil companies, have promised to pump more than $30 billion combined into carbon capture, hydrogen, biofuels, and other low carbon technologies. Some of that, you and I know how we feel about some of these, virtually all of which rely on tax credits in the IRA to be viable. I see what people are doing in the carbon capture space where they're pumping carbon into places, voids where they've pulled oil out of, and then they're sealing it up. I mean, I don't know what that's really doing or not doing.
Well, the consensus I've come across is generally it's a waste of money. It's an opportunity for oil companies to keep doing what they're doing. It's just.
And then we look at hydrogen. So for those of you who don't really know, you hear all these things about we're going to split water molecules. We're going to have oxygen and hydrogen. You're going to power your car. Well, it's a little more complicated than that. Most of the hydrogen that's out there right now comes as part of the oil industry bringing up liquid and producing liquid natural gas. and it's like a byproduct of it. So most of the hydrogen comes from the oil industry, and then biofuels are another thing that I have some involvement in. And even with biofuels, you're talking about, let's say, a 25 to 30% cleaner burning process as a fuel, but it's far cleaner in the process of making it. Now, but it's still, it still doesn't get as clean as what we get to, and why we talk about electric vehicles so much.
I could never run for political office in Nebraska if people knew my attitude and my position on ethanol. With one exception, if it were made from switchgrass and that type of material, then I'd be a little less skeptical. But if it's made from the current sources, I know, farmers have to make a profit, and the best way to do that is do that by raising corn and things. But the amount of
do you think it's a boondoggle? Do you think ethanol is a boondoggle?
The amount of energy that goes into making it and what you get out is not a good balance. No.
It is weird to see all of the biofuel corn that we have around here. People think about, Nebraska growing all the corn for the world kind of thing. It's like, well, not exactly. We grow all the corn that goes in your gas tank.
It goes in the gas tank, or it goes into sweeteners. That's what a lot of that is, to get your sweeteners for different food products and things of that nature. Hey, before we get off of the IRA, though, I do want to point out that there was a study that was done that shows that for every dollar that has been invested in that program, the public has reaped, I think it was $1.87 in returns. So there has been a net positive to putting money in that. That was a Yale study. I forget now which one did it, but there seems to be an indication that there was a net positive for the money being invested in it. We're getting positive things back as a result. The gentleman that was commenting on that from Cox Automotive, Stone or something like that, was saying that he'd like to, he thinks we can do better. And so I went in and asked my friendly chat bot. I said, okay, he says we can do better. What's he suggesting? And the chat bot came and says, well, he does say we can do better, but he doesn't say what those steps are. So it's a little, okay, fine. So right now, that's the best approach we've got. And it's had net positive for the country.
This is kind of interesting to see, though, some of this, and that the oil companies are pushing to keep the IRA still in place. It's really funny. If I were a Republican governor in the southeastern United States, I'd be giving the Trump campaign an earful about what it's doing for Georgia and the Carolinas and soon to be Kentucky and
something else.
I just, it's funny because Trump has called the IRA the Green New Scam, but I think, like I said before, I don't think people understand this. Yeah, I mean, that's not surprising, right?
No.
But he's promised to cut the unspent IRA funds. So, like the NEVI thing we were talking about earlier, out of $7.5 billion in appropriations, only $8 million has been spent. Okay, and if it was even, or maybe it wasn't 8 million, maybe it was 8 chargers. It's a very small amount of money. Might have only been like a couple million. It's a tiny amount of money, but it's expected that by 2026, some of the money will actually start being rolling out, because it's taking the states this long to figure out what they want, how to get the money from the federal government, how to put their plans in place for putting in the charging stations. And it's not a quick process.
Yeah, I know that personally because I've been communicating with the people at the state level, trying to figure out, when are you going to do, when are you putting the stations out? Have you selected locations for the type of thing? No, it's a long, hard slog. It's a process. People at the state government are entrusted with our taxpayer dollars. Now, do they always spend them the best way? No, of course not. But that's their job, is to look after how that's spent. So you want them to go off and just build a bunch of boondoggles, or do you want that money spent effectively and for the right purpose?
Well,
And
right now,
so
if our state would get it in gear, I can sell them to charging stations at a 70% discount. They
I
just need to come write
know,
a check. I've
I
got a
know.
deal. I've got a deal on new superchargers. But
So
crap, getting them off their ass to go
yep,
get that
yep,
money is a whole
yep.
nother ballgame.
Well, now
Yeah.
remember, this is a state that is extremely conservative, right? And it
Mhm.
just takes, typically having lived here and done EV World now for over 25 years, this state generally operates about a decade behind everywhere else. It's
So
just
earlier this winter, or this past winter, there was a couple days where it got really cold and something was going on, and OPPD asked people to be conservative with their electricity usage. And it was something to do with all the snow, which I found fascinating because most people here have gas heat, right? So, but they were still, OPPD was being really taxed during some point last winter. And people were trying to point out that maybe it's because of all the people with the EVs. I spoke to somebody about this at OPPD, and
that funny.
apparently they just passed the Omaha, like a month or two ago, passed 5,000 EVs in the whole city.
Yeah,
Okay, so that's
that's
for
a population area of about 500,000 people. Okay,
right, right,
was
yeah,
5,000. What is that? One
right,
1%? You know.
yeah. Well, anyways, it was kind of interesting. It's like, oh yeah, that was like 5,000 people all charging at the same time with about the same
No,
power draw as an air conditioner.
no, no.
And like in the middle of winter, but had to go. Apparently, she had to communicate with one of the news organizations and let them know that it probably wasn't an EV problem, with the power draw, and it was quite fascinating. But I don't know. You get a lot of misconceptions on some of the stuff about what's going on. Anyways, we're going to move on from that because I want to get to a couple things. I promised I was going to talk a little bit about Lucid. So Lucid broke quarter 3 delivery records. So they have delivered in 2024. They've already delivered 7,100 vehicles. In all of last year, they only delivered 6,001. Okay, so they're quite a bit ahead of where they've been. Now, part of this is they've got some crazy lease incentives. There's their Lucid Air. There's some models right now of their sedan that with lease incentives, it's like $550 a month now.
Right.
So they've really brought some prices down to be super competitive. And this is before the Gravity, which is their SUV, still hasn't hit the market yet. It's supposed to hit the market. Trying to think, it's fairly soon. It's supposed to hit before the year is out. There's supposed to be some coming out. I'm sure they have tons of pre-orders, but the company still has 4.28 billion in liquidity. They have a lot of damn cash in the bank. So they're not really hurting. And of course, like I've talked more about Lucid, they're part of the
Right.
Saudi. I mean, the Saudi
Right.
royal family owns like 60+% of the company.
60%. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're trading the stock and you're some minority investor, even the public part of Lucid is only like 30% of the ownership of the whole company. And of the part that's not in the public float, it's mostly the Saudis that own it. And so they're not going away. They're not going. Lucid is eventually going to be something very successful. It's just a matter of when. And they're one of the, like we talked, we had our friend from Italy, Marco Soriano, on.
Right.
He has the financial wherewithal. He's going to make it in the business. Okay. Not many companies in the EV space. And the problem always boils down to, do you have enough of a financial runway to get to a point where you can be successful? Now, the car business is tough. Okay. So, we've talked about this before. In the United States, there's only 2 car companies that have been around for more than 10 years that have never filed bankruptcy, and that's Tesla and Ford. And that's pretty stunning. Hopefully, Lucid, Rivian, and some of these others, we'll see them stick around
Yeah.
for a while. But I thought that was good news.
Yeah. And at some point, we probably want to talk about Stellantis. They're really having some problems. I mean, there's even talk of trying to. I've seen videos where they were saying, well, they're shutting down the Jeep lines, and the company is shutting down its Chrysler division.
They're overcharging for Jeep. When Stellantis took over Jeep, they jacked up the prices,
Yeah.
and they've done a disservice to the brand. It is a premium brand that's always made money, or has made money for years, and I think Stellantis has done a really poor job. I think they jacked up the price of almost all the Jeep products by about 10 grand right away,
Oh yeah.
and they just sit. I mean, I like the look of the Jeep. What's the pickup truck? The Gladiator. They're
Gladiator.
cool looking vehicles, but they start out at like $68,000, and that just seems really unrealistic when you can get a full size like Dodge Ram or Ford
Right.
F-150 or something like that
Yeah.
for less money.
Yeah, particularly since when I was growing up as a teenager, there were advertisements in magazines and comic books and things like that where I could buy a surplus Army Jeep for $500.
Oh wow, the
Yeah.
old Willis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not the Willis. This was literally surplus Army World War II Jeeps.
Well, that's who made those.
$500.
Wasn't it Willis that made those? Or
Well,
Willys?
yeah, but I think Ford built some of them too.
Oh,
So
Ford made them too. Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah. You didn't have to send it piece by piece in the mail like Radar O'Reilly did in MASH.
Hey, by the way, there is a company in the Philippines that actually does build replicas of the original World War II Willys, and it gets assembled and put into a crate, and then you get the crate and you unpack it and you put your car together.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty fascinating. I've seen those pictures of the Jeeps being shipped in a crate all over the world. We used to ship those to the Soviet Union during World War II and stuff like that, and they all shipped in that crate, and you took everything out and pieced it together.
So I think all that tooling ended up in India.
Oh wow. Let's see. All right. So I had this article that was from Motley Fool. I thought that was kind of funny. It says the smartest electric vehicle stocks to buy with $1,000 right now. I don't put a lot of credence in the Motley Fool, but it is sometimes to read them. But it was funny because they only picked Tesla and Rivian, and it was
I have
kind of a yeah. Well, it was just, but the thing is, I think it's something good to hold on to long term. Rivian's got good prospects, and besides, for those of you who haven't heard me really talk about this or really don't know much about Rivian, besides the two retail facing vehicles, the R1T and the R1S, they also have the Amazon vans, and they have only delivered something like 12% of all the Amazon vans they're supposed to deliver, and they've delivered like 13,000. They're supposed to deliver 100,000 over like 10 years, something like that. I mean, so they've got built-in business, and then on top of that, their vehicles sell pretty well. They're high quality, safe vehicles, and they have the new R2 SUV coming out, which they've already had like 100,000 pre-orders. It's a crazy amount of pre-orders they've had for it.
Yeah, and that's going to be built apparently at the Georgia plant, and they have taken steps here this week to get that construction project. They're looking, I think, at about 2027 for that vehicle to start being manufactured out of the plant in Georgia, which kind of got stalled as they were trying to restructure and get their finances better in line. I mean, if you give me a choice,
you look at the $5 billion. Well, I was going to say, if you mix that in with the $5 billion investment from Volkswagen into a software joint venture with Rivian, I mean, you just got a lot of things going on for the company.
Yeah.
What were you going to say? You're giving your choice of what?
Give me a choice between a Rivian and a Cybertruck. I'll tell you which one I'll take in a heartbeat, and it ain't the Cybertruck. So yeah.
But the Rivian just looks like a truck, okay, and the Cybertruck looks like something from outer space. Okay, it looks like aliens invaded our planet with their own their own pickup trucks. Okay, so I mean, it's just a different. It's got shock value. Okay, that's all I can say. It certainly
Well,
has
yeah.
some shock value because people who are buying the Cybertrucks aren't buying them to use them as pickups.
No,
So
it's
at least not the same way.
It's an expression of their personality or their views, personal view of life or whatever. So yeah, I can understand that. Stuff I like, other people won't like, but yeah.
All
Anyway,
right. So now we're moving on to our top story of the day: the best and worst cities to drive in 2024. Okay. And Bill and I, we've had weird discussions on this topic because the fact that I used to be, before I moved to Nebraska, used to be of the belief that you drove a car till somebody totaled it out for you. Basically, that was my experience. Is that, and I lived in Memphis for 20 years before I lived in Nebraska. I lived here for a little over 10. And here, never been in an accident. I've seen accidents here, but they're really rare. And I was just like, but in Memphis, I'd see accidents all the time. And if I go back down there, I pretty much have a near-death experience every day I'm there. And it's just different. I mean, we have very stress-free driving in Nebraska. But so there was this ranking, and I'm going to go through this. I'm going to pop this up on the screen because some of this is a good chart, and it's kind of fun to see what it's showing here.
Yeah, I came across this and had to share it with Dave.
Yeah, because he knows, because we've talked about this a couple times. Because like, man, my car insurance is so much lower here, and so many things. So, anyways, these statistics rank cities based on a bunch of cost of ownership and maintenance is an interesting factor, traffic and infrastructure, safety, and access to vehicles and maintenance. Now, I wouldn't imagine that. I guess I've always taken for granted you can go buy a car somewhere, but so apparently overall, number one was Raleigh, North Carolina. And it doesn't rank, it ranked number 2 in cost of ownership and maintenance. So apparently there's a lot of cheap mechanics in Raleigh, is all I can imagine. But it's kind of interesting to see. But then we get down to the number 2 city is Boise, Idaho. Okay. Now, cost of ownership. Now, this is rating 100 cities. This is fascinating to see where this top 100 is, because I'm going to show some of this in a minute. But Boise is ranked number 1 in safety in the country, and that was enough, even though it was number 81 in access to vehicles out of 100.
Yep, you lost the audio. There you go.
Yep. Even though it was number 81 in one of the categories, it still was good enough to rank number 2. And as you go through these others, Corpus Christi didn't rank particularly high in anything. Greensboro was number 1 in cost of ownership. But when we get down here to one that's kind of relevant to us, number 13 was Lincoln, Nebraska. Now, Lincoln is a city that is about half the size of Omaha. Okay. And it's the second biggest city in Nebraska, ranked 18th for cost of ownership, 52nd for traffic and infrastructure. To be fair, it's hard to get around in Lincoln. It does not have a great system for getting through the town, other than going down I-80, and part of it, but that doesn't really get you around the town. It's slow going through most of the city. And it ranked 89th in access to vehicles. So I guess it doesn't have a lot of places to buy a car, but it ranked number 12 in safety. Now, our dearly beloved Omaha is a little further down the list. Oh, we ranked like 42nd overall, so almost middle of the pack, which I found kind of fascinating. It said 25th in safety. But anyways, I'm going to scroll down a little further down the list to where the worst ones were. Oakland, California, Philadelphia. And some of these are pretty bad on the overall ratings. But I can sort this, and this got kind of it. So safety was the one thing I was most concerned about. So cost of ownership and maintenance, people don't really think about that much when they're talking about driving. Traffic and infrastructure, well, that's kind of cool. So Scottsdale ranks as #1 for traffic and infrastructure. Now, also, Scottsdale is an enormous city,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of highways to get around and try to dodge traffic and things like that. Just a lot there. I would argue this #2 rating for Orlando, traffic and infrastructure. I find driving there to be a pain in the butt. Okay.
Yeah, I've
And
done it on
so
a couple of occasions. So
I go to Orlando every year, sometimes several times a year, and I just don't see it being that great for traffic and infrastructure. And a lot of it is because the it's always growing. You got all these towns that are tightly around that metro, and there's just a lot of traffic. I can't really comment on Lubbock or Irvine. Tulsa's kind of surprising. Tulsa's not a hard city to get around. So I don't know. Wichita, not a real huge. Well, Wichita's probably about as big as Omaha, right? Probably pretty similar. Um,
I don't know. I've only driven through it maybe once or twice in my life, so I can't
oh,
really
I've been
say.
there a few times for tennis tournaments. Let me see. But just kind of looking at some of these, it was kind of interesting. I'm not sure how they pick some of this. See, Birmingham being #10 and that Birmingham, I don't know, that kind of doubts some of that. But safety's one though you can pick from insurance statistics, right? So the rate of accidents, serious accidents. So I thought this got kind of interesting. It's rating like Boise, Anchorage, Gilbert, Laredo, Texas, Irvine, California, all being the safest places to drive. Henderson, Nevada, which surprising, that's part of Las Vegas. Scottsdale, El Paso, Virginia Beach. Lincoln ranked 12th in safety. Omaha, I'm thinking we're number 25, which I would have guessed we would have been much better off in the safety category. But when I flip this, reverse it, my old hometown of Memphis, Tennessee, came in 100th out of 100. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I thought, and then like I was in St. Louis recently, it ranked #8 or 98. I mean, some of these Atlanta, Georgia was terrible at 97. It's funny. I don't think Atlanta's that hard to get around.
Yeah,
It has
I
so
think I've
many
driven
interstates.
there. Yeah, I think I've driven through it maybe a couple of times in my life. So
Yeah, I'm just saying, Washington, D.C. ranked 94th in safety. You're having then that's one place. And they're ranked 97th in infrastructure. I would
I've
have
never.
almost pegged it dead. I would have pegged it dead last. So 97 out of 100, I guess, isn't bad on that one. But I found just some of this kind of fascinating. I don't know where, like I'm saying, the total cost of ownership. I don't know how heavily that should weight access to vehicles and maintenance. I mean, are there really cities you have trouble finding cars to buy or places to get maintenance? I mean, I've that one I find. Um,
Or
yeah,
access to places to charge your EV.
see, it should have had that. It didn't have that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
hardest place to buy vehicles or to get maintenance is Anchorage. It's like, well, you know, I don't know. Some of these
Yeah.
were quite interesting. I just thought that there was some pretty fascinating statistics. It didn't surprise me that Memphis was worst in safety because I've just
You've
wow,
experienced it.
it
Yeah.
is just crazy when you enter Shelby County, which is the county it resides in, just how bad drivers are.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is just constant people cutting in and out of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
lanes. You'll be going the speed limit on the interstate. Let's say the speed limit is 55 and you're going 60 and somebody passes you going 100.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's on like 4 lanes and that car going 100 is cutting in and out of traffic.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's
Imagine
probably
what happened, huh?
very accurate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was all I really wanted to cover today, Bill. And but I think
Well,
we covered plenty.
our just to let everybody know that our hearts and minds are thinking of you guys down in Florida and particularly the Tampa, St. Pete, Sarasota area. We hope you take precautions, stay safe. That Mother Nature is good to you, and that you get through this with the minimum amount of disruption to your life and your loved ones. So and if you got
and
an
our Thursday
EV,
guest, is going to be
there.
postponed because they're in Sarasota, Florida, so that's going to be pushed back. We were supposed to have Oasis Amps on here to talk about their Airbnb style charging program, and we'll delay that by a couple of weeks. Just depends, I guess, on how much devastation he has where he's at. So we'll just have to wait and see. But otherwise, folks, please be safe, and I'll be back tomorrow with Mike Herzog, and we'll figure out some stuff to talk about then.
Okay.
Have a great day, folks.
And you've always got me on Thursday if you need me. So.
All right.